This is it. This is my Avengers moment. Everything that I've done so far has been leading up to this. When I created the Guide to Surviving the Internet, I knew I was eventually going to have to talk about the weird, bizarre, autistic man-child from Ruckersville, Virginia that became an internet legend. And of course, the man I'm talking about is Chris Chan. This story is so crazy, so tragic, so outlandishly ridiculous that you could write an entire book about it. Prepare yourselves. This is going to be a long episode because I'm going to go into great detail about the history of Chris Chan. So strap yourselves in, Space Rangers, and buckle up, because I'm going to tell you all about the story of Chris Chan. Kristen Weston Chandler was born on February 24, 1982 in Charlottesville, Virginia to Bob and Barbara Chandler. To say that Chris didn't have an easy childhood would be an understatement. From an early age, he was diagnosed with autism, or to be more specific, a high-functioning autistic. This is one of the many things that would define Chris as he got older, for better or worse. As I previously mentioned, Chris did not have an easy childhood. Far from it, in fact. When he was 3, he was abused by his babysitter who locked him in his room for hours after he interrupted one of her phone calls. This event traumatized him so much that he didn't speak until he was 9. He would have to undergo speech therapy in order to regain his ability to speak. Another incident of abuse occurred at Nathaniel Green Elementary School, where Chris was physically abused by his teachers and even the principal. Bob and Barbara were so outraged that they attempted to sue the school on the grounds of abuse. The case went to court, but sadly they were unsuccessful as the courts ruled in favor of the school, who demanded that Chris be placed in either a special ed school or an institution. Fearing that Chris would be institutionalized, they pulled him out of the public school system and homeschooled him for an entire year. In 1994, while attending the Leonard Bernstein Symphony Orchestra, the namesake character asked Chris for his name. He replied with Christopher. The animatronic bear misheard it as Christian. Because of this simple mistake, Chris got his legal name changed to Kristen Weston Chandler, and thus CWC was born. Shortly after the name change, Chris won a Sonic the Hedgehog contest, with the grand prize being a $1,000 Sega shopping spree. This would begin Chris's lifelong obsession with the blue blur.
Tonight, Sonic the Hedgehog is running wildly in the Chandler household this weekend. 12-year-old Kristen Chandler of Charlottesville was the winner in a video game shopping spree. Christian is one of only about 100 winners nationally to receive $1,000 worth of Sega games and equipment. For his parents, it's just another example of how well he's doing. Christian is a high-functioning autistic child. This past fall, on his own initiative, he entered a contest based on a favorite cartoon character.
What I had to do was exactly watch Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon, and I'd listen to what Sonic says at the end of it and write it down for a whole week, and then I had to mail it in, and I had to be drawn out of a hat, and I just won.
Chris was tasked with creating a character for a high school class project, but had trouble doing so after he was told he couldn't use any copyrighted characters. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, he got a burst of inspiration. Why not combine Sonic the Hedgehog with Pikachu? The resulting super combination became known as Sonic Chew. Nobody could have possibly predicted that this silly little creation would go on to become one of the most infamously bad webcomics of all time. Chris was not popular in the slightest. In fact, he was a frequent target of bullying due to his autism and the fact he was in special ed. He didn't have many friends to speak of other than a close-knit group of females who he referred to as his gal pals, when in actuality they only hung out with him because they felt sorry for him and wanted to protect Chris from the onslaught of bullying he received. Chris graduated from Manchester High School in 2000 and would later enroll at Piedmont, Virginia Community College, where he caused quite a stir trying to find a female companion. Chris went around the campus holding a sign that said, "Looking for a boyfriend-free girl." He did this for 2 months without any success. The dean of PVCC, Mary Lee Walsh, thought that Chris was soliciting sex, so she confiscated the sign. Undeterred by this, he made another sign, which resulted in a year-long ban from PVCC. He was also required to see a shrink and take an anger management class per Walsh's request. Chris would later paint Walsh as a villain in his Sonic Chew series as a form of retaliation. He eventually graduated from PVCC with a degree in computer-aided drafting and design. You could make the argument that these bizarre and traumatic events were the catalyst for Chris's future insanity, but that would only be a prelude for what was to come. Chris made his first YouTube video on February 24th, 2007, which just so happened to be his 25th birthday. The world was never the same again.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and dudes of all teenagers. as well as the gals. My name is Christian Chandler. I am here, and y'all are there. This message is for everyone of the present and the future beyond this date, February 24th, 2007, my birthday, my 25th birthday. I am high-functioning autistic, and in my 25 years, I have seen and learned so much. And today, I intended to share some wise words that I hope each and every one of you will take to heart and allow for yourself and everyone else a better, brighter future.
In 2005, Chris met Megan Schroeder. The two hit it off and became really good friends. She's often referred to as the only true friend Chris has ever had. The reason I say had is because it came to a tragic end in 2008 after Chris did something profoundly stupid. You see, Chris had always viewed Megan as more than a friend and desperately wanted to start a romantic relationship with her, but she wasn't having any of it. At the time she met him, she had just come out of a turbulent relationship that ended in heartbreak. Because of that, she wasn't interested in a romantic relationship with anyone, especially Chris. However, none of this would deter him from trying to win Megan's heart, which is where the infamous Adam Stackhouse came into play. Sony held a contest to promote the PSP version of the classic rhythm game Parappa the Rapper. The contest required people to record themselves rapping and then submit the video online. The grand prize was a limited edition PSP with a copy of the game and a trip for two to Seattle, Washington. Chris had hoped to win the contest so he could take Megan to Seattle to convince her to have sex with him. Those plans were foiled when Adam Stackhouse and his sister submitted this video.
Every single day, stress comes in every way. I ain't got no time for nobody. My style is rich, dope, fat, and witch. We'll make a cake today that looks rich. Crack, crack, crack the egg into the bowl.
Crack, crack, crack the egg into the bowl.
M-I-X the flour into the bowl.
M-I-X the flour to the bowl.
Crack, crack, crack the egg into the bowl.
Crack, crack, crack the egg into the bowl.
M-I-X the flour to the bowl.
M-I-X the flour into the bowl.
Baking a cake, yeah, things you gotta try. I'm doing this for years, but don't ask me why. Butter, butter, butter joins the bowl.
Butter, butter, butter joins the bowl.
Stackhouse ended up winning the contest, and Chris didn't take it very well, going on a long, angry tirade against him. In any case, I loathed Adam and his sister for stealing my one chance at taking my sweet gal friend to Seattle. It would have been terrific. I might have been able to change her outlook on not planning on having children. She and I are both virgins, although I am a frustrated, high, functionally autistic 25-year-old virgin. I don't have much going on for me, really, because I've been the dog in America's favorite game, Kick the Autistic, for my whole life. I cursed those 7 people between the cast of the 3 illegal videos to die and burn. As for Adam, if he is reading this and is asking, you got something to say to me? I do. P.S. Fuck you, you dream-smashing son of a bitch. He even made a video pretending to shoot Adam and his sister Anna with a toy gun. No, I am not making that one up.
And that is how angry I am at Adam Stackhouse, Apperlusky, Brudel, and Surya Butchwald. They should have been disqualified because they had music and more than one person in their Freakazoid videos.
Later that same year, the satirical internet wiki Encyclopedia Dramatica discovered Chris and promptly wrote an article about him. When he discovered this, he demanded that ED take the article down, which obviously didn't work, and the only thing he succeeded in doing was making himself look worse. In an act of revenge against ED, he drew an explicit picture of himself fingering a naked woman. His trolls had suspected it was Crystal, the fictional sister he created for Sonic Chew, when in actuality the naked woman in question was Megan. The reason I didn't have to put the word allegedly in that last statement is because Chris himself came out and admitted it. When Megan found out about it, she felt disgusted, degraded, and betrayed. In one of the emails she sent to Chris that was later leaked online, she told him exactly how she felt about being fake fingered. I just don't know what to say now. I am very much scarred by that image and it will never leave me. And I can't decide what's worse, the image in general or the fact that you intentionally drew it and gave it to the webmaster for that site that you hate so much. Not only have you poured gas on the fire by doing that, adding obscenity to the already horrific site, but you have also embarrassed and humiliated me and degraded and demeaned me whether you realize it or not. I mean, I'm not that kind of girl and you know that, so why? And you also lied to me about it. Between that and my recent heartbreak, how am I to trust another man again? Simply put, I can no longer trust anyone now. You have very much hurt me on an emotional level, and when I get hurt emotionally, it'll take a physical toll, as in no appetite, feeling tired and sick, no sleep. So I am unsure what to do about this. I can't say I really think of you the same anymore. I'm sorry to say. I will continue to give the remaining items for the Zune, and that will be all the content you have with me unless I decide otherwise. I hope you understand, so we'll let time decide how I feel about this current situation. Until then, please don't come up to me anymore unless it's to give you what I owe, which seems kind of awkward now. I know how it feels to be alone, but I can't keep throwing away my pride little by little just to keep you satisfied, you know what I mean? There has to be an enough is enough at some point, and I cannot continue to disgrace myself by forgiving things that I never find forgivable in the first place. That's all I can think to say right now. I'm sorry, we'll just see. Megan. And with that, the one true friend that Chris had was gone, and things would only get worse from here. He was permanently banned from the game place in August 2008 after unleashing a racist tirade against a black patron. He was also banned from his local church after the pastor discovered his ED page. From this point forward, Chris would go on a downward spiral that would wipe away his sanity and subsequently make him a target of scorn, mockery, and fascination. Chris's downward spiral began when he uploaded a video of his house. In the 11-minute long video, he gives a detailed tour of his house, which is so filled with junk and trash that it's practically unlivable. Seriously, it was absolutely disgusting, the pure definition of a hoarder's paradise. The trolls quickly tracked down his address, 14 Branchland Court, and started posting it all over the internet. Chris reacted how he always did.
I want everything about my house off the internet! I'll send in detectives, I'll send in police, I'll send in everything in my power to get it off the internet!
Listen to me.
Yes.
Listen to me.
Yes.
Shut that goddamn thing off. I don't care what you do. You get all that stuff off of there tonight.
I'm working on it.
Go work on it.
I am
Do
working.
you realize something? Let me tell you. If the health department of Greene County sees those videos that you put on the damn internet, they could condemn our house and we would have to move out of it.
It's been alleged that the Chandlers were offered to be profiled on the television series Hoarders, but turned down the offer for undisclosed reasons. One can't talk about Chris Chan without talking about the various sagas he's been involved in. There are way too many sagas to talk about in this video, so I will most likely make a dedicated video on the history of Chris Chan's sagas in the near future. Until then, there are two more sagas that I feel are very important to the history of Chris Chan. While there have been many trolls that have tricked Chris into believing he's found a sweetheart, the most infamous one out of all of them is Blue Spike, who pretended to be a woman named Ivy. And as you probably guessed, Chris fell for it hook, line, and sinker. He would end up forcing Chris to humiliate himself with a series of embarrassing videos, including one where Chris was pretending to have sex with a blow-up doll while screaming Julie. It all led to the shocking revelation that Blue Spike wasn't Ivy, but in fact a 13-year-old boy. What made the revelation even more scandalous was the fact Chris had phone sex with Ivy numerous times. Yeah, just let that sink in for a minute.
But this is... Can we talk with the fans for like 5 minutes? And then I'll tell you, please.
I'm
Actually,
sorry.
no.
Could you...
No, I'm ready to tell you.
Okay.
This whole time, Chris, you've been having sex with a 13-year-old boy, you sick fuck!
What?
Yeah, I'm a 13-year-old boy, Chris, and you've been having sex with me this entire time. I'm gonna give all your fucking data to Chris Hansen, you fucking pedo fork, so you better get the fuck out now. Before I report you to the fucking feds.
Of course, we can't talk about Chris Chan without talking about Liquid Chris. Liquid Chris was a man that went by the name of Ian Brandon Anderson. He made a video claiming to be the real Kristen Weston Chandler, imitating his mannerisms, speech patterns, and general demeanor down to a T. As you can probably imagine, Chris didn't realize it was an obvious joke. This led to him screaming at him in numerous videos, decrying him as an imposter and proclaiming my name is not Ian Brandon something. They also also fought over Chris's latest sweetheart, Casey Dvoria. Have a guess how that turned out. After this, Chris went dark for a while and seemingly dropped off the face of the earth, but he wouldn't stay quiet for long. In 2011, he re-emerged with a wildly different and, quite frankly, bizarre identity. Chris started identifying as a tom girl. He wore makeup, dressed in women's clothing, and changed his overall appearance in an attempt to get people to take him seriously as a woman, which didn't really work because he's not an attractive woman. I'm not making this up. This is not a joke. These are not words I'm writing on a computer screen. This was an actual thing that happened in 2011. And the bad news would only get worse. Chris and his mother Barb assaulted Michael Snyder, owner of the game place which had banned Chris in 2008. Some have alleged that the motive behind the attack was Chris deluding himself into thinking that Snyder was somehow behind the never-ending stream of trolling and harassment, and after several unsuccessful attempts to get unbanned, he decided to take drastic measures with the aid of his mom. They quickly fled the scene after the attack, but were quickly arrested by police. Chris was charged with assault, trespassing, and failure to stop, which was later reduced to a misdemeanor, while Barb was charged with failure to stop and assault on a law enforcement official. Chris was sentenced to 1 year of probation, community service, and mandatory psychiatric treatment and evaluation. Barb was sentenced to 2 years of probation and community service. This, combined with the tragic death of Chris's father, Bob, due to a heart attack, were huge factors in contributing to Chris's insanity and worsening mental state. By this point, it had become clear that Chris had jumped into the deep end and was not going to resurface. That is, until an old friend reared her ugly head. Remember Megan Schroeder? I hope you do, because what I'm about to tell you is something that isn't widely known to the public, so here it goes. Chris started harassing Megan after he had deluded himself into thinking Megan was behind the trolling attacks that he had been subjected to since 2007, so he doxed her and released her contact information on his Facebook page, hoping that his friends would troll her, which didn't work. He labeled her as a vile, wicked, traitorous bitch and held her and Snyder responsible for his bad reputation, even went as far as to say she should have never been born. Needless to say, Chris had it out for Megan, although he now claims that he's gotten over that grudge and expressed his wish that she be left alone to live her own life, stating, "I just say let her, wherever she is, live her life, and I'll just stay here, live in mine. It's all done and over with." Whether or not he actually stays true to that belief, only time will tell.
Greene County investigators are looking into the cause of a house fire early this morning. It started at about 3 o'clock this morning at a home on Branchland Court. That's in the southern part of the county. We're told the fire started in a first-floor bathroom, but got quickly out of control and eventually shot through the roof. Everybody inside was able to get out safely, but one firefighter suffered minor injuries. The cause of the fire is still under investigation.
On January 14, 2014, 14 Branchland Court, the same house that Chris showcased in his 2009 house tour video, caught on fire. The cause of the fire was because Chris had decided to brew coffee in the basement with an extension cord, which set the house on fire. The cats were unharmed, but everything else was destroyed in the fire, which forced Chris and Barb to temporarily move out and into a rental house in Barboursville, Virginia. They moved back to 14 Branchland Court in January 2015. Chris once again found himself in trouble after an altercation at a GameStop over the Wii U game Sonic Boom: Rise of Lyric. He despised Sonic Boom, but not because of its quality, but because Sonic had blue arms, which is what caused him to deface the store's Sonic Boom display. When the assistant manager saw what he was doing, he threatened to call the police, to which Chris replied, "Don't call anybody," before blasting him in the face with a can of mace.
Don't call anybody.
In light of the incident, Chris was not just banned from that GameStop, but every GameStop store in the state of Virginia. In 2015, Chris started identifying as a lesbian by the name of Christine, although it's currently unknown whether or not he got a sex change to reflect his transition into a woman. He did, however, file the request to change his first name to Christine, so technically he's Christine Weston Chandler. There's even a Patreon page for Sonic Chew. Again, I'm not kidding, there's an actual Patreon page for Sonic Chew in 2017. What a time to be alive. The story of Chris Chan is a tragic one. Don't get me wrong, Chris has done a lot of stupid shit and is an all-around terrible person, but for some strange reason I can't help but feel sorry for him. This is a man that had the potential to do great things and be successful in life, but he never did anything with it. The older he got, the more deluded he became. He lost touch with reality and believed that his life would be some Disney-like fairy tale forever, so when he was forced to grow up and act like an adult, he rejected it, and his parents just let it happen. If there's anything we can learn from this, is the fact that it's never a good idea to publicize your personal life on the internet, because the internet can be cruel and toxic sometimes, and there are vultures out there that will take that information and use it to ruin your life. I used to laugh at Chris Chan, thinking he was someone to be mocked, but now that I'm a fully grown adult myself, I realized that the person I was laughing at as a teenager is a mentally ill autistic man-child that never got the help that he needed. Sometimes I wonder if Chris Chan can be saved, but over the course of writing this episode, I realized that's never going to happen. The older he gets, the more deluded and paranoid he becomes, so the likelihood of Chris rebuilding his life is slim to none. Chris, if you ever watch this from one autistic person to another, I sincerely hope you get the help that you need, because I believe that everyone deserves a second chance. Normally in this section I would give my opinion on the specific topic at hand, but for this episode I wanted to do things a little bit differently. I wanted to bring a different perspective into the equation. Now there's someone that I know, a very close ally of mine, who knows of Chris Chan. Now, not to the extent that I do, but he knows of Chris Chan. So I wanted to talk to them, pick their brain, and see what they thought about why Chris Chan is the way that he is. So I decided to enlist the help of the supreme overlord and executive producer of this show, and generally all-around awesome guy who just so happens to be my best friend, Eric Pugh, but you know him as Kin Raiku. And I did a little phone interview to pick his brain on everything Chris Chan. Here's a look. Alright, so I'm here with Eric Pugh, my best friend, otherwise known as Kin Raiku. He's kind of in the shadows. We don't really talk that much, but he's a good guy, and the reason I brought him on is because I wanted to talk with him about Chris Chan, since he knows about the situation as well, and I figured it would make sense to, get a different perspective on this. So, Eric, just really quickly, what is your opinion on Chris Chan, your overall opinion, and how did you discover him?
Well, I haven't been the most vigorous follower of Chris Chan, and so I probably don't know him as well as the next guy, but what I can say is that he is a rather outlandish individual. That much I can say.
Well, I think that's pretty fair to say. He's an interesting kind of fellow. And there's been so much said about a Chris Chan. Like, I know, because he's kind of like this insane individual. So, do you ever think that it potentially could be saved if things, turned out differently, I think? Do you think he ever could have been, saved?
I honestly can't really answer that with a solid conclusion. But maybe he could have gone down a lighter path I guess if he had just taken some time in institution and for rehabilitation.
I mean, yeah, I think that's pretty fair to say. I think that too, because I mean, the story itself is just so kind of crazy, because I agree with you on that. I think that he had the potential to do great things and be successful in life, but never really did anything with it. And I think that is sad, because it's certainly a tragic story, because we've known each other for years, so, and you know, we've done pretty well for ourselves. I mean, you know, I'm autistic, and, you know, you're autistic too, so, but, you know, we were generally pretty, I don't know, well-adjusted. We certainly were not like Chris Chan, but I do think that, if things were, I guess, obviously different, that, it definitely, hopefully wouldn't have turned out like this, because, I mean, just, it's, I mean, it is kind of, it is really, really crazy. Again, because the situation is so complex. Like, just for this video, like, obviously, you obviously don't agree with the fact that he was, like, going out there and publicizing his personal life on the internet for everyone to see, right? I mean, that's just, I think we can both agree that that's just really not smart. I think that has a lot to do with why Christian was, I guess you could say, trolled into oblivion. Would that be like a fair statement to make?
Yeah. I think it goes without saying that just flashing your personal information into the wide world out there is like an enormous risk. Yeah, one look at that and some stranger you've never met will have all they need to track you down and do unspeakable things to you, if they desire such a thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's kind of insane. I mean, and I guess you could say in a way it is kind of like a cry for attention and just, you know, getting people like to notice you, and yeah, it's just, and I guess acknowledging, I guess in another way, some of the behavior towards, like, I don't know, like certain women. I don't know if you're aware of the whole gal house situation. Again, you're probably not, I mean, really not exactly fresh on it because it is so complex, but and I guess you could say in his treatment of women, like the gal house kind of thing, I think that in of itself is sad, and, you know, like, I mean, treating the woman as if trophies, like objects to be won, you know, like sexual objects. I'm curious, what do you think about that?
I mean, you know, that's just uncouth.
I mean, yeah, it's, you know, I mean, I talk about it quite a bit in the videos, how he treated specific women, so it's that nasty. But I guess to kind of just end it here, because I don't want this to go on for too long. You know, just again about Christian, like, why do you think, personally, that Christian has generated the interest that he has, and why he's an internet legend, for better or for worse? Because, you know, on the surface, he's just this, you know, just regular guy that just goes on insane tirades and perpetually acts like a child and is stuck in this, like, Disney-like fantasy world. Why do you think Christian has remained, why do you think Christian became so popular, and why do you think he's, like, this internet legend among internet legends?
Perhaps it's the guy's general unpleasantness. He just loves to let the world surrounding him know how unhappy he feels.
Yeah, you know, it's...
No matter where he is, no matter the situation, and no matter who he is talking to.
Yeah, and that's a pretty good thing to say. It's pretty fair to say, you know. And, you know, I think the reason why Christian became so popular, and why he still is to a certain extent, is because I think people just, like, cringe. People just, like, I guess, laughing at other people's misfortune, as cruel as that is to say, but it is the internet. And I think people just like reading fascinating topics and fantastical stories, and this feels like a story that you would see in a movie, but the fact that it's real, the fact that it's actually happening, is just, I think that attracts a lot of people. It's kind of like the Truman Show, if you really want to go that far. But yeah, it was really nice talking to you about this. I think you've had some really a good insight. So yeah, I want to thank you again, Eric, for talking to me about this. I really appreciate it. So yeah.
Welcome, my friend.
So if there's anything you want to say to the people that are watching this, or anything like that, just go for it.
All I gotta say to everyone out there, well, it was an honor to be on this man's video. It was fun to talk to him, as usual. And I hope you find my voice easy to bear with.
Just one more thing before I go. I know this is going to sound blasphemous, but in a way, your voice kind of sounds a little like Christian. That's because the voice in certain ways kind of sounds a little similar, but I wouldn't say you're anything like Christian. You're nowhere like Christian, but I'm just saying that your voice does kind of sound a little similar, so you kind of remind me. But I just want to throw that out there. Thanks for talking to me, Eric.
You're welcome.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for doing that. I appreciate that. I sincerely apologize for the lower quality audio in that interview. I literally thought I had the microphone turned on, but apparently not. The Movie Maker settings are finicky. Sometimes when I turn on the microphone, it's turned on, and other times it's not. I don't know. It's weird like that, so that's why the audio is lower quality than it would normally be, so I apologize. Now, before I end this video, there are a few things that I want to address. In the video, the year where I say Chris went to the Leonard Bernstein Symphony Orchestra, which, by the way, is how he got the name Christian, I said it was 1994. That is incorrect. It was actually 1989. I misheard it as 1994 when I was doing research for this video on Know Your Meme, so I wrote it into the script, but when I checked back on the Quickie, it was 1989, but I had already recorded it as 1994, so I thought I would point that out. And that actually makes a lot more sense being 1989 because he changed his name to Christian shortly after that had happened. And when he won the Sonic contest, I believe it was something like 1991 or 1992. I could be wrong on that, but it was somewhere in the 90s, early 90s, something like that. So I thought I would address that. Also in the video, I say that Liquid Chris's name is Ian Brandon Anderson. That is also incorrect. It also just so happens to be Kristen Chandler as well. Which is weird, there are two Christian Chandlers running around. I mean, there are two Zion Douglases running around, so having two of the same first names isn't totally out of the realm of possibility. And I wasn't kidding about that last statement. There really is another Zion Douglas running around, but that is totally beside the point. Now, I knew the whole Ian Brandon Anderson thing was a joke, but I literally thought that was his name, but apparently it isn't. So, honest mistake, just thought I would point that out. Now, the reason I don't mention Sonic Chew that much in this video is because Sonic Chew itself is so big and massive that it requires an entirely separate episode of its own, which I will probably do in the near future, so look out for that one. The game place, the same place that Chris was banned in 2008, closed in 2014 for reasons that have never been disclosed. I don't know if it went out of business because of financial reasons. I don't know if it just packed up and moved and didn't disclose the location as to prevent Chris from showing up again. I don't know. All I know from the research in the video is the fact that it is closed. So just thought I would point that out. So yeah, because I assumed that it was still open when I was researching it, and I was shocked to see that it was actually closed like 3 years ago. So funny thing. You know, Chris lost his virginity, actually, in 2012. Yeah, I know, it's kind of crazy to think about, but he actually did, to a hooker. And that is actually the truth. So, while you may think he's an autistic virgin with rage, to be fair, he's still an autistic man / woman / whatever with rage, but the virgin part is not true, so thought I would point that out for those of you who don't know. Chris Chan is not a virgin anymore. He hasn't been for years. Yeah. The goal with this episode was to make you understand why Chris Chan has done the things that he's done. Now, that doesn't excuse the terrible things that he's done, and it doesn't excuse his character flaws and terrible personality, but it's more of an explanation. And hopefully you understand why Chris Chan is the way that he is. You don't have to necessarily agree with what Chris Chan did, but you have to understand why he did it. So for those of you who already know Chris Chan, I hope this video was a nice little refresher. And for those of you who have never heard of Chris Chan before, I hope you weren't scared off by the disturbing nature of the video, because it gets pretty freaking weird in certain parts, so I hope you weren't turned off by that. If you are intrigued to look up the history of Chris Chan, if this video intrigued you to do that, then I would highly suggest going to sonicchew.com, aka the Quickie, which is one of the most fascinating things I've ever read. It's essentially an archived timeline of Chris's entire life, all the way up from his birth in 1982 to the present day. Seriously, give that thing a read if you want to know more about Chris Chan, because it is just mind-bogglingly fascinating. And by the way, a majority of the research for this episode comes from the Quickie, so huge shout out goes out to all the Christorians for keeping Christery alive. I apologize for that terribly cringy pun, but I just kind of had to mention that. Huge shout out once again goes out to Eric Pugh for doing the interview. Thank you so much for agreeing to do that. You have no idea how much that meant to me, so if you're watching this, Eric, thank you so much. You are awesome. This episode has been really, really long. I spent like 3 days editing it. I'm exhausted. I'm just gonna end it here. This is ThatKidDouglas, aka the Unhero, signing out. Deuces. Stay frosty and cute. We're cueing outro sequence now.
Hey yo, what's poppin', my homies? It's your boy, Mr. Chipmunks. So the other day I did this super awesome kissing prank video. I was making out with girls everywhere. It was fantastic because I'm the realest person on the internet. It was totally real. Okay, yeah, it was fake. It was totally fake. All the actresses were paid off, but not with money, but with a bunch of chicken tenders from Popeyes. There's this couple called Ethan and Ela Kine from H3H3 Productions. I'm pretty sure you've heard of them. They found this video, and then they made fun of it, saying that it was super cringy, and that it was bad and awful, and that it was the worst that YouTube had to offer. That was a very mean video, and it hurt my feelings, and I'm gonna fight back, and I'm going to sue them, because they used a portion of my video, so I can just file a takedown notice and then sue them for defamation because they slandered my character. Yeah, I know it's completely fair use, I know commentary and criticism is covered under fair use, but that doesn't matter. Everyone knows that I'm an overinflated douchebag that has an overinflated ego and an overinflated view of himself. So who gives a shit about fair use, right? I mean, fair use is for pussies. Though they are nothing but big bullies who stole my intellectual property, and they deserve to burn. So please, help me in fighting against these big bullies, and together, we can rid the internet of fair use and commentary and criticism and all that other shit. Ha 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 ha.